Module number 6 will talk about personal hygiene. So the law says that food handlers have to keep themselves clean, wear suitable protective clothing, and report any foodborne illness or skin condition to the supervisor. So that's for food business operators. The law also says that food handlers must be supervised and instructed and or trained in food hygiene matters concerning their work activities. So they must be competent to produce safe food. So they must be trained up to the level that they need to perform their job efficiently. For instance, if you are a manager, you will need a food safety level 3. As an operator, you need a food safety level 2. If you were a KP or assistant or something like that, food safety level 1 would be sufficient. So at least one person must be responsible for HACCP and must receive HACCP training. So on yachts, we recommend all heads of departments to do HACCP training. So HF, chief stewardess mainly, so that they can actually train, and when they are running inspection, they know what to look for. So high standard of personal hygiene are necessary to stop food contamination. So obvious things such as hand and nails that need to be clean, skin, boils, septic cuts need to be covered with first aid dressings. So you must cover your mouth, nose, or ears, prevent coughing and sneezing into food. That's pretty obvious now in the light of COVID-19. This should be just a reflex. We should always do that. Hair needs to be covered, despite the fact that we don't see that very often on yachts. This is something we should do. No jewelry can be worn in food facilities or in food service facilities, and obviously no smoking. So the law says that you have to have an adequate number of hand wash basins, and they must be suitably located. So a suitable location is usually at the entrance of the food facilities and designed for washing hands, and washing hands only. So you don't want to see any crockery, glasses, pans, spatulas laying around hand wash basins. They are only designed for washing hands. They must be provided with hot and cold running water, soap, and hygienic drying facilities. So what are the properties of protective clothing? Well, first of all, this is there to protect the food from the risk of contamination, but it also has a dual purpose. For instance, for chefs, the chef jacket is designed to protect the wearer from any risk of burns. For example, they are double-breasted. They must be easy to keep clean and kept clean. No buttons, so I've mentioned that in the previous module, but buttons such as shirt buttons like this that might potentially fall into the food shouldn't be allowed in food rooms, so they should be enclosed into a double layer. No external pocket. Why? Because people carry things in these pockets and they might fall into the food. For instance, if you are carrying a pen into the side pocket here, if the tip comes undone, it can fall into the food. So that's another tip. When you're carrying pens, it's always better to use retractable pens and not pens which have detachable parts. So it must cover the wearer completely, must not be worn outside, despite the fact that we see a lot of chefs walking around the market with their chef's outfit, proudly displaying it. That should not be done, because the bacteria and the dirt from outside can come into the facilities and then multiply on food or lay on the surfaces and then go into the food. This is very bad practice. And head covering must be provided also. So which of the following illnesses or conditions must be reported to the supervisor? And so that's really, really important. This is a legal duty to respect some, to report some of those things. So would you report if you've eaten suspect food? Yes, you would report that. So a septic cut or boils, would you report or not report? So septic is that the cut is infected. You would report. Sprained ankle. So does this have to do with food safety? Not really, so you would not report it. Discharge from eyes, nose, or ears. Would you report or not report? You would report. Ingrowing toenail. You would not report. Again, this hasn't got anything to do with food safety. If you were ill whilst abroad, would you report or not report? You would report. Sunburn whilst abroad. Not report. Moles. Not report. Skin infection. Definitely report. Black eye. Nothing to do with food safety. Not report. Diarrhea, vomiting, or food poisoning. You would report. Serious cold or flu. You would report. Close family contact as diarrhea, vomiting, or food poisoning. You would report. And so the last sentence at the bottom of the screen here is really, really important. Food handlers with diarrhea and vomiting should not return to work until at least 48 hours symptom-free. So despite the fact that you might be short-handed or that you are absolutely necessary to the operation to run the charter successfully, etc., you're better off staying in the cabin than going in contact with the food and making everybody else on board sick. Just imagine if this was norovirus, it would only take a few hours before everyone else gets sick as well. So hazard and controls associated with food handlers. So on the left-hand side of the screen we have the hazards, and on the right-hand side of the screen we have the controls. So what should we do in regards to the hazard? What should we do when we are entering a food room? We should wash our hands and wear clean, protective clothing. What should we do when we have contaminated hands? Wash them. So when you are washing your hands, you need to wash them for at least 30 seconds. So there has been some studies made where the three biggest areas where the largest number of bacteria remain are under the fingers, under the nails, in between fingers, and the third one is not obvious, but this is the case. It's around the wrist. So this is really, really important to wash your hands until at least half of the forearm. Touching mouth, nose, or spot. What should we do? Wash your hands. Hair. So they should be covered. And you should also wash your hands after you've touched your hair. Sneezing. We'll sneeze into the shoulder, away from food, or into a disposable handkerchief, and of course, wash your hands. Coughing. That's the same. We'll cough into the shoulder, away from the food, and into a disposable handkerchief, and wash your hands. So if you have a clean cut, you will wear a brightly colored waterproof dressing. So brightly colored and non-food color, so something blue, purple, something that cannot be mistaken with food. So in large operation, this is even going to the extent of putting metallic wires inside waterproof dressings, so that when the food goes out, it goes through a UV process, X-ray process, and they see if there is something that has dropped into the food. If you have a septic cut or boil, so if you are infected, you will be excluded from work. So even if you have an infected wound on your leg, you cannot really work in the food preparation or food service. If you have a bad cold, exclude. Discharge from ear, nose or eye, exclude. Suspect food poisoning case, exclude. And you would also exclude a nail biter. Why? Because this is related to contamination of food. It's an habit that is very difficult to get rid of. So you're better off not hiring a nail biter, or exclude if you notice, than having a nail biter within the kitchen. Dirty protective clothing, replace. Outdoor clothing, you can cover it. So for instance, in large factories, people, they come into their city clothes, yet they don't wear that during food preparation. They will wear an overall with their city clothes underneath, and this is fine. And jewelry you would remove completely. So there is only an allowance for wedding band, but without detachable parts. And if you decide to wear a wedding band, in this case, you have to remove it each time you're washing your hands.